After the loom is prepared, we want to begin weaving. When we are choosing our colors of yarn, we want pieces that are about 3 feet long so that we can keep weaving for a while. We want to start at the bottom of our loom, and we want to weave from left to right and then back from right to left and continue that pattern. These pieces that we're weaving through the loom are called the weft pieces. Remember that the strings on the loom, in this case the yellow strings, are called the warp strings. So I'm going to start over my first warp string and go over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, all the way across to the right side of the loom. And then I'm going to pull the weft piece through. And I'm going to leave this tail at the end. We want our weaving to be about 1 inch from the bottom edge of our loom. This piece, this weft piece, the tail, can be tied off to the first warp string. So I loop back through, go through the loop, and pull that tight. And I can trim that piece off. When I'm pulling the weft through the warp strings, I want to pull it just so it's tightly through. If I pull too hard, it starts to pull the first warp piece in and touching the other warp pieces. So I want to make sure I'm not pulling it too tightly. Now I want to find the end of my weft piece, and I want to look at my last warp string. Here I stopped over, so to go back from right to left, I'm going to start under. And I am weaving above the first weft piece with my second. We're working again from the bottom of the loom to the top. And I pull the weft through. Remember, I'm going over one, under one, over one, under one. And I pull this through until the loop touches the last warp string. And I pull it, push it down, and then just gently pull until it's tight. Again, I want to keep these vertical so I can always straighten those by pulling them apart. Straighten those warp strings. To continue weaving, I look at what I did on my last weft piece, and I stopped under the warp string. So I find the end of my weft, and to go from left to right, I start over the first warp string. Over one, under one, over one, under one, all the way across. Pulling the weft through until the loop touches the warp string, and then I push them tightly together, making sure that my warp strings stay nice and vertical. And we continue this pattern throughout our weaving, always looking at our last row that we wove. Here I stopped over on this warp string, so to go from right to left I need to start under, and it's under one, over one throughout our weaving. We see that I don't have enough yarn with this blue to weave back from left to right. So this is where I will need to attach my next color or more of this color. I'm going to change colors and I'm going to use this orange yarn. To tie the yarn pieces together, I'm going to do the first step like tying my shoes 2 times, and this is called a square knot. So I make an X, go underneath, and then do the same thing. Make an X, go through the center, and pull these pieces tightly together. Then I like to give them some tugs to make sure that they're nice and tight. I can cut these tails. I don't want to cut the knot, so I'm going to leave a little bit of the yarn from each color. And now I'm ready to keep weaving. Since I stopped under the last warp string here on the left side, I will want to find the end of my weft and start over the first and under the next. We should be noticing that we are alternating with our pattern. So if I look at the row below, the one I just wove, I'm seeing that I'm going over the warp string that I went under with the row below. So the pattern over one, under one, over one, under one goes vertically and horizontally with our weft. I'm going to attach another color of yarn. You are welcome to create a pattern, or you can use 2 or 3 colors. You can make your weaving colorful or have fewer colors. Remember, we just want to make a square knot, Xing going through the end 2 times, going through the center 2 times, pulling that tightly, pulling the yarn pieces to make sure that they are nice and tightly knotted together. Making sure that our warp strings are not pinching in too much, pushing down and working from the bottom to the top. Our goal is to finish our weaving all the way to the top of our loom with maybe about an inch space. Next week I will show you the process of cutting the weaving off of the loom and tying our warp strings together. Remember, we always look at our last warp string, so when I go back the other direction, I stopped under, so I'm going to start over and continue the pattern, making sure that when I get to the end of my loom, the right side going this way, that I pull the weft through, pull this row down, and make sure that the loop on the end is just touching the warp string and not pulling too tightly. I stopped over on my warp string on the right, so now I'm going to want to start above and start under, and then over, under, over, under, over, across. I hope that you enjoy weaving. Please do your best. If you are having a hard time, rewind this video, go back to the beginning, and make sure that we are alternating or switching back and forth over one, under one, always remembering that the last warp string is going to tell us where to start to get back to the other side. Have fun, do your best, and I look forward to seeing your weaving progress.